Welcome to the Fit Drivers Podcast, sponsored by 10th Street, connecting carriers and drivers to make life easier, pre and post-hire. From efficient and seamless recruiting to tools that keep drivers engaged and compliant and on the road. 10th Street helps you market, hire, retain, and grow. Learn more at 10thstreet.com. Okay, well, welcome everybody to another Fit Drivers Podcast. With us on us today is going to be Cara Harris, soon to be a PhD in nursing from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Cara is a nurse researcher whose work focuses on occupational health among long-haul truck drivers. Ms. Harris is passionate about improving the health and safety and well-being of workers in high-risk environments such as long-haul truck drivers. Cara, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. Here at Fit Drivers, our podcast sponsored by 10th Street. This is about really helping people understand the critical dangers of the health issues of professional drivers out there and what's going on, and hopefully come up with some solutions that people can hear and figure out they can help them. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you, Bob. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really excited about coming on here and disseminating and talking about my work. But actually, yesterday, I officially graduated, so I'm officially Dr. Cara Harris today. So
All right.
Thank you so much. So I'm really excited. Like you said, I'm an occupational health researcher, and I've just been studying long-haul truck drivers, and then about occupational exposures such as diesel engine exhaust and then tobacco smoke, and looking at how they pose hazards to this workforce.
Yeah, so I interviewed not too long ago. I have a relationship with the researchers at Virginia Tech Institute, the two doctors there, and they do work in this space from the FMCSA and study all the driver exams and all that kind of thing. So when she came on, I asked her. I said, and she very kind like you. I said, "Would you want me to call you by Susan or a doctor?" And she was, "Well, Susan's fine with me, but my dad says, hey, listen, you earned that, so you're a doctor now." So
Yes.
She said, "I paid for that." So
and she's absolutely correct.
So okay, good doctor. So before we dive into the research that you did on these long haul drivers, I want you to take a few minutes and tell our listeners exactly, what you do at the University of Alabama and your specialty there and so forth. Then we'll dive into the findings that you did.
Sure. So like you mentioned in my bio, I'm occupational health nurse researcher at UAB. And so I've been mostly studying long-haul truck drivers and then specific occupational exposures that may pose as hazards as they work in a confined space as a truck cabin. So specifically, I've been looking at tobacco smoke and then also diesel engine exhaust. And so my previous work includes doing a concept analysis on diesel engine exhaust or DEE. Where I explored diesel engine exhaust and its link to lung cancer. And ultimately, we found that a long-haul truck driver that uses a truck, a 18-wheeler truck, and then also operates using a diesel engine has an increased risk for lung cancer, basically.
So tell us, I want everybody to understand, so why someone, obviously you're fairly young, why did you pick this particular occupation to focus your research in?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And do you have family members that are drivers, or do you have what drew you to this population?
So I came in with a basis in occupational cancers and things like that. So I had a real interest in cancer oncology as a general whole, but I didn't have a specific one that I was just really focusing on. And so when I got into the program with my PhD, I met Dr. Heaton, was my dissertation chair and advisor, and she brought long-haul truck drivers and that piece to it. And so looking at that, it gives me the piece of long-haul truck drivers and then lung cancer. And so we just combined two interests together and created a pretty good project. So no, I do not have any members that are long-haul truck drivers, but I do see them, and I have family members that do smoke, and so it's just little pieces to come together.
Right. Well, yeah, I've known Dr. Karen for many, many, many years, and what I always so drawn to her is she has a very unique situation of being a doctor, but also married to a truck driver.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Driver. So I always found that very fascinating. She's always been very supportive of the work that I do. So, okay. So let's talk about specifically what you did on this particular research project and kind of tee it up and tell the people what you had to do to be able to get this information, how you had to do it, and collect the data and the interaction you had with drivers to really, prove and write this, research project?
Sure. So for this study, I collected hair from 32 long haul truck drivers in the greater Alabama area, and I analyzed the hair for nicotine and its metabolic cotinine. And so I was, recruiting by word of mouth, by social media, going to truck stops, and just kind of just seeing, who would want to, participate in the study. So I was going to also trucking companies, getting my flyers out, and just really just seeing, who would be available. And so for the most part, I got majority of my participants from a Findlay Speedway truck stop. And so I kind of just set up a table and then had the truck drivers come through as they were going on their breaks, and they were able to complete the study within about 10, 15 minutes while they were getting gas and just taking a small little break. And so from the study, I had them, like I said, have a hair sample and then also complete a paper survey. And so this paper survey concluded components of the NIOSH WellBQ survey, which measured worker well-being. And so we also explored the relationships between these levels, the nicotine and cotinine levels, the demographics, worker well-being, and then self-reported smoking status. So I had 17 drivers that were classified as smokers, and then 15 that were classified as non-smokers.
So tell them, I'm very fascinated about this because of always my life working with drivers and to be able to get them engaged, right, to do whether it's doing their biometric screens or whatever. So tell us about, did you get any pushback from drivers? I mean, to get that number, did you have to talk to 100 drivers, 200 drivers to get the 37 to participate, or what kind of response was it when you were in there approaching these drivers?
So I would say I probably did talk to about 100 drivers, to be honest with you, but a lot of them were saying that ones that didn't participate were saying they didn't have enough time to complete it, or were in a rush, and some that I did speak to were not able to get to Alabama where I could collect the hair myself because it had to be all in person. So a lot of them were from out of town, and so it would have been easier for them if it was like electronic or something like that, but they weren't able to actually coordinate the schedules where I could actually get to them.
So you actually took the hair samples there on site, correct?
Yes.
And so what happened next? What did you do next? And they had to fill out a questionnaire, correct?
Yes, correct. I did a paper survey, and then after that, then I would take the hair sample and I would take it from either the back of their head, arm, or facial hair, and then I would put it in a small microcentrifuge tube, and then after that, then I would immediately place it on ice and then store it at the lab at UAB.
Right. And then who then did that research? Who did the examination from there, or do the reads, and how long did that process take before you got the results back?
So I actually did the analysis myself with the help of the metabolomics and proteomics lab at UAB. So we worked together to actually clean the samples and get them ready for analysis at the lab. And then we did everything in-house. And so it took about 4 days in total for all the samples because we did a test run to make sure the system was working with the liquid chromatography mass spectrometry machine. And so we did a test run, which took about 2 days, which was getting everything cleaned, washed, and then extracted for analysis. And then the next day is when we would actually do the analysis. So about 2 days for each batch. And after we got everything cleaned and extracted, it took only about, I want to say, minutes to actually get the numbers. But it was the actual process leading up to it that took a majority of the time.
So were you was part of this study then to reach back out to the drivers to let them know the results, or was there a way they could find out their results, or what was that? Was there a step in there for that?
So the work of my dissertation will be published in American Association of Occupational Health Nurses, AOHN's journal, Workplace Health and Safety. So it will be published there, but there's no way for me to actually reach out to the drivers to give them their exact numbers or anything like that. But all of the results that I've shared with you today and, in much more depth will be provided in Work and Health Safety Journal.
So are you able to tell us your findings then? What did you find?
Yes, of course. So, like I said, we had 32 drivers that provided hair samples and completed the survey, and we found that most of the drivers were male and African American, and they also found that hair nicotine and cotinine levels were higher in older adults, and then also we found that these participants were most likely to report smoking behaviors and then tended to have higher cotinine levels. And we also found that smokers had higher mean hair cotinine levels than non-smokers, which is expected. And then also these participants with higher cotinine levels were also characterized as smokers, and they were more likely to agree with their positive statements about their workplace, which is from the workplace policies and culture domain from the NIOSH will be Q. And then they were also more likely to report worse health outcomes, which is expected given that they smoke. So it would be most likely that they will report worse health outcomes.
So tell me about. I'm interested to know about. You said you had half that were smokers and non-smokers, but was this to find out the effects of secondhand smoke of somebody being in a cab or being around someone that is a smoker? Was that what that part of that research was for?
So because we did total exposure, it's not to distinguish between first hand, second hand, or third hand. It's just to give a foundation of just nicotine and cotinine levels in general. So the next step could possibly be to distinguish between each level, but this level is just to give a foundation, just to see what the levels look like.
So out of that, then, what did you determine? I mean, what's the danger risk for these men and women that that you did the testing with?
And so there's no like standard as far as NIOSH, as far as any federal regulation that says this is the limit for nicotine. They only have airborne standards. And so their airborne standards are zero point 0.5 milligrams per milliliter. And then from our studies, they were much more higher than this. So they range from 3.8 to 55 and higher. And so based on this, we have seen that they need to have more federal regulations that provide actual regulations for hair nicotine, not just airborne, because these are totally different and can be used in different ways.
Right. So what can be done then is a solution to help these men and women. I mean, obviously, quit smoking. You know, would certainly be a fair. But are you also part of this to look to be able to work with people like myself to identify carriers? I know there's some carriers out there who have put in a non-smoking policy, right? If you drive their trucks, you're not allowed to smoke in their trucks. Some of them, I know there's a couple, not many, but some you can't even smoke on campus at the terminal or on campus at all. So is that what this is really kind of geared around for those that do, want to quit smoking, and that was another question I had. Did you happen to come across many drivers that said that they really wanted to quit, tried to quit, did quit for whatever period of time and started back again? Was that ever part of it?
So I just distinguish them between either smokers or non-smokers. So in the smoking characterization, it could also include former smokers as well, as long as they had smoked in like the past 6 months. Because of the hair analysis, it could still show up. And so I didn't have any smokers that were saying they were trying to quit smoking, which was interesting. But I did have some that were former smokers who had quit long enough that were considered non-smokers. But the whole part of this study is to say that yes, smoking, has a negative effect on your health, but it's also unique because they're in a small confined space. And so because of that, they may smoke, outside, but it is still in their system and it still can be confined in that space. And so what we can do is possibly increase ventilation systems in the cab. Like you said, stop smoking for those drivers in the cab, just completely stop that as well. And then also what we can do is possibly have smoking cessation programs that are tailored to drivers and that are actually tailored to their unique work process, whatever that may be. So maybe like an app or maybe a hotline where they're talking to somebody, because most of the time they're just bored or trying to get through their workday. So something that we could do possibly to get their mind off of it and provide them with some kind of ease to go out to their workday.
So, a lot of times on my podcast, I talk about the numbers I get from FMCSA, and each year we lose. Well, the latest has been over 300,000 drivers a year because they're medically disqualified, right, from the DOT. It has to do with, could be other extremely medical issues, but most of the time it's their blood pressure, sugar, sleep act, those kind of things, right? They can't pass their DOT or their exam. So are you able to talk at all about, what you did, your findings and so forth, and understand how this does have danger for your health, how any of that could be directly related to some of these drivers that we lose every year because it does affect their overall general health?
So like you said, those FEMSCA numbers look at drivers getting disqualified due to medical issues, and my study looked at more so outcomes related as far as smoking and tobacco smoke exposure and how that relates to their work environment and overall health. So I didn't really look at those numbers, so it's not really a direct correlation to those numbers. I mostly looked at given the foundation of how this nicotine and cotinine levels, what their numbers are, and how it can inform future research, basically.
So tell the listeners so that they understand about the levels that you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
the levels and what that means in layman terms, basically.
So I'm speaking about nicotine and cotinine levels. So this is basically how much nicotine is metabolized in a person's body, whether you're a smoker or a non-smoker. And so like
Okay.
I said before, what we found was whether you are a smoker or a non-smoker, the levels are still much higher than any federal regulation that we have currently out there now.
In this occupation.
Yes. But the
So
occupation is not necessarily for truck drivers in general, it's the federal standards for anybody.
anybody. So if I understand correctly what you said, I want to make sure I have this right. You found those levels and so forth surpass what the standard regulation that you have, like you talked about, right?
Yes, correct.
Correct.
And like I
So
said, the standard we have now through the associations, they are based off of airborne. And so my findings are based on biological. So they're not directly comparable, but it's just to give a foundation that regardless, they're still higher. And we need to actually get some regulations that focus on biological standards.
So you mentioned early on when I first was introducing, you were talking about exposure to diesel.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that, please?
So truck drivers operate diesel engines, and then they also fueling diesel fuel. And so by that, they're exposed to diesel engine exhaust. And so the danger of that is that diesel engine exhaust and tobacco smoke may have a synergistic effect, meaning the two in combination pose an even danger threat to truck drivers.
Higher
And
level.
so diesel engine exhaust is not something they can modify because of their work environment, but tobacco smoke is. And so that's why I mostly focus on tobacco smoke, because that is something that we can modify. That is a modifiable risk factor of just not smoking. But diesel engine exhaust, they can't really do anything about that themselves. It had to be from the companies, whether that's using cleaner engines or using some kind of electric fueling or something like that.
Right. Well, I know if you read information on the CDC website about long haul drivers and so forth, they classify it and talk about how it's one of the most unhealthiest and dangerous occupations out there because of the sedentary long hours, exposure to like what you're talking about. And so, and I talk all the time, and I don't know if you're a sports fan or not, but years ago they had to in football particularly redo the concussion protocols, right? And because I always explain to it that players want to play, drivers want to drive, and sometimes when you have people that work in a very dangerous occupation, it could be dangerous to the health. You have a responsibility, right, to protect those people from themselves. And so I talk about that all the time. That the reason why they had to put those protocols in for concussions in football, because the player, you ask them, are you okay? They're going to say okay, and they're going to go back in the game. Later on, and they age out, then they have all these unfortunately mental issues. And same with drivers. And I'm always talking to companies about they have to do a better job of helping these drivers. So in your professional opinion, and I talked to Karen a lot about this as well, do you feel that there's more needs to be done in the trucking industry and in that population to really educate and help these men and women understand how to live healthier out there on the road when they're out there?
Yes, I definitely think long haul truck drivers are a vulnerable population and definitely need more research, education. They just need more as a population in general. And I think maybe we could start with maybe their DOT exams, giving them, more information through that, because like I said, these truck drivers, they're not getting much access to healthcare because they're working long hours and, driving across country. And so we need to be able to meet them where they're at, whether that's, the one time they get a DOT exam, providing information and education that way, or giving them some kind of app or some kind of hotline where they can, go and talk to people about things that they may want to, work on, whether that's health or anything, but just being able to provide these drivers with more and where they can actually reach it and become available.
Well, there's a huge push on in the industry to find a younger population of drivers, right? Getting younger generation involved in it. And I say all the time that we'd be doing the younger population coming in, male and female, a grave injustice if we didn't learn from the previous population, right?
Correct.
And so we should be doing more, like you said, orientation, their DOTs, explain to them if they are, because they're going to respond that they're a smoker or non-smoker. And would you like, as simple as, have you thought about quitting? Would you like to quit? Do you want help? Here we have some, here's some information, or here's a link or something, right? Here's a handout, something that people can help you. And I know I'm working with a driver now. Over the Thanksgiving, I was on XM Road Dog channel, and on with a friend of mine, longtime friend, she's a host on there, and Leah Schaefer on Road Dog. And we had one of her drivers that called in, and we're talking, and he's said he's been trying to quit smoking for years, right? And I just completed a program with a company that helped the driver that he was 3-day smoke, 3 packs a day smoker for like 20 years. Wow. And talked to his fellow employees, and they said they could never remember seeing Mike without a cigarette in his hand. He always had a cigarette. Anyway, he was about to fail his medical card. He got down to a 90-day card. We got him in the program, got him coaching, and anyway, the story is that he went back and was able to get a 2-year card, and now he's been smoke-free for 2 years.
That's cool.
Yeah, and and I said, why did you do it? What made you change your mind? And he said, I refused to be healthed out of my job. I wasn't going to lose my job because I wasn't willing and smart enough to take care of my health, something I can have control over, right? As
Right.
you know, so many things in our life that life throws us curveballs we don't have control over, but things like that we have control over. We can quit smoking, what we put in our mouth, all those kind of things, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really a great testimony for him, and the people of his job, they were very excited because he's been with that company for like 15 years, and so they were able to save a driver. So anyway, this driver called in, and we're going to put him in the program. He agreed to get into the program, and so we're going to follow him, and hopefully, we can have another poster kid out there, right, talking about how if you're ready to do the work and you're willing to do the work, you can quit smoking. And of course, increase your opportunities because I know there's got to be, I know from my experience over the years with the drivers that face, the blood pressure, the high blood pressure, and the weight and so forth. And drivers tell me all the time, said, Bob, I need to lose the weight, but I can't quit smoking. And I said, why? I said, because if I quit smoking, I'm going to eat more. And I said, well, I'd rather you quit smoking.
I'd rather you eat more than smoke.
Yeah, let's do that first, and then we'll tackle it. Oh, no, I need it. And so it's a tough struggle for people, mm-hmm. right? And, to do that. So anyway, well, thank you so much, Cara, for coming on, and Dr. Now, congratulations on that. That's great. And so for our listeners, where would they be able to get to really read the study from HR people that would like to, and I'd like to be able to get this out to them? How long before the research paper will be out, and how I can get a hold of it, or how we can get it posted?
Yeah, so it will be published in Workplace Health and Safety. It hasn't been submitted yet. It probably will be maybe a few weeks before I can get it submitted, trying to get everything revised and everything from the authors and everything like that. So I would say probably at the earliest, the beginning of the year, I would say will be available. But I would definitely, the link and all that good information to.
So let's keep in touch, and then let me know when you have that so I can get it out on the listeners and also HR contacts and so forth. And then is there more research that you want to do on the horizon for long haul drivers?
Yes, there's definitely much more to be done with long haul truck drivers, and I'm looking forward to possibly continuing my work and just helping to contribute to worker health safety among this population. So yes, just stay tuned.
All right. Well, good for you. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Bye-bye. Welcome to the Fit Drivers Podcast, sponsored by 10th Street, connecting carriers and drivers to make life easier, pre and post-hire. From efficient and seamless recruiting to tools that keep drivers engaged and compliant and on the road. 10th Street helps you market, hire, retain, and grow. Learn more at 10thstreet.com.